Chapter 91. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Water-breathing fourth-formed tide, under the sunlight, the surface of the wooden sword glowed with a pale blue light, and the endless tide-like attacks came at Shinichi from all directions. Facing this powerful move of Tomioka-ju, the originally lazy Shinichi had to pay a little attention. He clenched the wooden sword in his right hand and grabbed a shorter wooden sword in his left hand. Forest-breathing 13th formed Nichiryu wolf soul, the endless light formed a green giant wolf, roaring and crashing into the endless tide. The shadow of the sword flickered, and the ground was cut into gullies one after another. The air waves raised by the two people were wrapped in a lot of smoke and dust, making it difficult to see the specific situation of the fight. Beside the open space where Tomioka-ju and Shinichi fought, there were also two petite figures watching nervously. There were two figures. One was Shinobu Kocho, who was frowning with her arms crossed, and the other was a girl wearing a team uniform, with dark green medium-length hair, and a very gentle and lovely appearance. Her green eyes were full of worry when she looked at the fight between Ju and Shinichi. Her name was Mikomo, and she was also the senior sister of Ju, Tomioka and Santo. When Mikomo learned about the final selection of Fujiki Mountain, she was very worried and found her junior brother Ju. Sure enough, Ju had changed a little after this incident. He became silent. Every time Mikomo looked for him and hoped to write a letter with him to greet the master and Santo or go back to Sagari Mountain, Ju always found an excuse to escape. He seemed to be afraid to face Santo, but correspondingly, Tomioka-ju also became the most dazzling one among the swordsmen of that session, growing at an astonishing speed. Within a year, when the swordsmen of the same period were still hovering at the Gun class and Exine class levels, he had become a rare A-class swordsman like a rocket, and even killed more than 30 evil spirits. Such an excellent performance made Shinkomo proud of Tomioka-ju, but also very worried about his situation, because Tomioka-ju, whose personality had changed, had a habit after joining the Demon Slayer Corps. Whenever he had time, he would take a knife to challenge Morihashi Shinichi, and he would not say anything regardless of winning or losing. If Shinichi did not agree, he would stand outside the door of Shinichi's family with a wooden sword until late at night or when he left for a mission. When Tomioka-ju came to challenge Shinichi when he was still a Gue-class swordsman, everyone would secretly laugh at him for overestimating his own abilities, but it has continued to this day, and even the most mean people will admire his perseverance. Take back the words and turn your eyes back to the scene of the fight. Crack. Cough. The sound of a wooden sword breaking and a muffled groan were clearly heard by Shinobu Kocho and Shinkomo, and the outcome was already decided. As expected, when the smoke and dust cleared, Ju Tomioka was leaning on the broken wooden sword with one hand and covering his chest with the other hand, panting violently, and his hair and uniform were wet with sweat. On the other hand, Shinichi, who looked like nothing had happened, carried the wooden sword and walked straight to Ju Tomioka, and took the initiative to extend his hand. You fought well, you have improved. The outcome was obvious. Seeing that Ju was not injured, Shinkomo was relieved, and Shinobu Kocho next to her had a calm expression. Although she thought that Shinichi had many shortcomings, she was very sure of his strength in terms of strength. However, Ju Tomioka's progress was also obvious. At least when he fought with Shinichi a year ago, Shinichi had never taken the initiative to use the double sword style. It was already amazing to force Shinichi to use the double sword seriously. Tomioka-ju ignored Shinichi's outstretched hand, stood up in silence, and said coldly after a long while, I lost. Shinichi has heard this sentence I lost 35 times, no, it should be 36 times including this time. Shinichi retracted his outstretched hand and looked at the black-haired boy in front of him with some emotion. Sometimes, you can't judge a person by appearance. I didn't expect that the boy who was not very eye-catching at the beginning had such great potential. Tomioka-ju, who lost, grabbed the broken wooden sword and turned to leave. He was always so straightforward. Seeing Ju was about to leave, Shinkomo hurried over, first bowed respectfully to Shinichi, and then asked Ju if he was okay. However, facing the senior sister who cared about him, Tomioka-ju was also very cold, and only said 2 words occasionally. Shinichi dropped his wooden sword and shouted at Tomioka-ju's back, Tomioka-ju, don't come over here again. Wait until you become a pillar before you challenge me. Remember. You are just this short of the barrier now. Tomioka-ju paused for a moment, but finally left Shinichi's house steadily. Stinky boy. Shinichi said unhappily. Shinobu Kocho also walked to his side, looked at Tomioka-ju's back, and then looked at Shinichi again. Hey, Shinichi, will he listen? Didn't you say something similar? But he still insisted on challenging you. Shinichi smiled and handed the wooden sword in his hand to Shinobu Kocho. This time is different. From the fight just now, I can see that his water breathing has not reached its peak. He should have felt it himself. Mr. Urokadaki and I have discussed that Santo is the best inheritor of water breathing, but Tomioka-ju will be the new guide of water breathing. Shinobu Kocho looked at the somewhat lonely figure, raised her head slightly, and snorted softly. My sister will definitely become a pillar before that guy. Indeed, the two most famous swordsmen in the Demon Slayer Corps recently, in addition to Tomioka-ju, the other is Kocho Kane, Shinobu Kocho's sister. With her ultimate mastery of flower breathing, Kane has also completed quite a few tasks while leading the Butterfly House, killing more than 40 evil spirits. She is also the A-class swordsman with the greatest hope of becoming the next pillar. Shinichi tilted his head and looked at Kocho Shinobu, and asked with a smile, is that so, Shinobu? But I think that although Kane is powerful, she always spends extra time trying to make friends with evil spirits, so she may not become a pillar before Joe. Huh? Shinichi Mu, that's too much. How can you say that? Obviously, our relationship is closer to you, okay? You actually speak for outsiders. Kocho Shinobu protested. Shinichi held back his laughter and teased, really? Then can you help me? Let Kane and I stay together for a while. Every time we chat, you come over, so we don't have a chance to chat. What? No. The excited Kocho Shinobu was like a hedgehog with its hair standing on end. Shinichi couldn't help it and burst into laughter. In fact, Shinichi and Kane had already seen Kocho Shinobu's misunderstanding, but they didn't care and just laughed it off, treating it as a child's thoughts. At least so far, Shinichi has only seen the Kocho sisters as friends and sisters, and Kane also sees Shinichi as a trustworthy friend. There is no such feeling between the two as Kocho Shinobu misunderstood. However, it is fun to tease children occasionally, so neither Shinichi nor Kane explained it to Shinobu, so Shinobu still has such a misunderstanding in her mind until now. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Come to think of it, since Shinobu believes in your sister so much, have you ever thought about working hard to become a pillar yourself? Shinichi said casually, and at the same time, he couldn't help but touch Shinobu Kocho's soft black hair. Don't touch my head. I'm not a child. Shinobu Kocho impatiently shook off Shinichi's hand. Huh. Alas. Shinichi withdrew his hand with some regret. The hand felt really good, much better than the chubby Enji. Of course, Shinichi was just joking just now. After all, Shinobu's talent for killing demons is not outstanding, and her strength is too small. Although Shinobu Kocho has been promoted to a Class E swordsman with special combat skills and toxins, neither Shinichi nor Kane, or even Shinobu Kocho herself, thinks that she can become a pillar, but if she can't become a pillar, she can't. Anyway, with powerful people like her sister and Shinichi Muto, the Demon Slayer Corps is also very powerful. Shinobu Kocho thinks so. By the way, Shaonin, speaking of which, I recently found that adding some wisteria flowers to dorayaki will make it more delicious. Do you want to try it? No. In just 2 years, 2 lower strings were killed one after another. When did the lower strings become so useless? That Muzan Kibutsuji's vision doesn't seem to be very good. He may also be a waste. Do we need to be so cautious? Just find it and kill it. In a dim room, a figure said carelessly. With the dim light, the appearance of the person who spoke could be seen: a pair of golden eyes, a cold face like a knife, short black hair, a headband on the forehead, a big Wu character in the middle of the headband, 2 sharp fangs exposed at the lips, arms folded and hugged together, black claws flashing cold light. The one who spoke was also a ghost. But surprisingly, this ghost called out the name of the ancestor of ghosts, Muzan Kibutsuji, but nothing happened. You know, every evil ghost has a curse in their blood. Once they call out or expose Muzan's name or information, they will die miserably. But this ghost with a headband not only called out Muzan's name, but also dared to call Muzan a waste. It's incredible. In front of the headband ghost, there is also a figure sitting, who seems to be writing something furiously. Hearing the words of the headband ghost, the figure stopped writing and said in a gentle tone, "Woo, it's not that simple. Muzan can survive for 1,000 years, so he is definitely not that easy to deal with. The Demon Slayer Corps has fought with the evil ghosts for hundreds of years, but until now, no one has ever been able to really hurt Muzan except for that swordsman." The ghost named Wu just curled his lips when he heard this, and then said casually, "I messed up what you asked me to do last time. I met that little guy, the little guy who inherited the Shinichi breathing method and bloodline." Hearing this, the figure who was originally sitting quietly stood up all of a sudden, and his appearance could also be seen clearly under the light, wearing a Peugeot suit, with slightly curly hair and a refined face. He looks like a very knowledgeable doctor at first glance, but under the refined face, the sharp fangs and claws also show his identity. He is also a ghost. Really? That child, how is he? A trace of reminiscence flashed in Wu's golden eyes, and he said lightly, "That's it, it's much stronger than that family, and it doesn't bury Shinichi's breathing method. In addition, Xiangjio, are you sure that what you studied can be useful to Muzan?" That the ghost named Xiangjio was stunned for a moment, shook his head after a moment of silence, and sat back in the chair a little dejectedly. "I don't know, after all, except Shinichi, we have never faced Muzan, but at least our efforts are not hopeless. By the way, Wu, I got some news recently, so I would like to ask you to go to Kyoto to help me find that person." Wu frowned and said unhappily, "Still looking. I have traveled most of Japan. Are you sure that woman is in Kyoto?" "I'm not sure, but it's good to try, isn't it?" Hee hee. Wu smiled coldly, then turned around and walked out of the room. The next second, his body suddenly disappeared, leaving only a residual shadow. Watching Wu leave, Xiangjio's eyes returned to the table, which was filled with various bottles and jars, and even some advanced experimental tools that were only available in foreign countries appeared on the table. Looking at these scattered bottles and jars, he sighed, as if complaining and sighing, saying, "Ghosts should not be born into the world. These are all sins, Muzan. Lord, 4 pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps, Flame Pillar Rengoku Makijuro, Rock Pillar Sadness Al-Jyomiai, Sound Pillar Yuzui Tengen, and Forest Pillar Moriki Shinichi, all saluted in unison to the Lord in front of them, Ubuyashiki Yoya. Please stand up quickly. I am really happy to meet you all again. I am very moved by your efforts for the development of the Demon Slayer Corps. Please accept my thanks. Ubuyashiki Yoya is still the same. The affinity he exudes makes people involuntarily respect this gentle and strong lord. It is another semi-annual meeting of the pillars. It is different from the previous one. This time, there are 2 more little ones beside the Lord Yoya, 2 little girls wearing small purple kimonos, 2 very similar faces like carved porcelain dolls, which make people want to pinch them. In fact, Shinichi did so. When visiting the Lord, Shinichi would pinch the 2 little girls' faces involuntarily. Of course, it was not for nothing. Shinichi would always prepare some small desserts and candies in his pocket, so the 2 children of Yoya are still very close to Shinichi. Yes, the 2 little ones standing next to the Lord Yoya are Yoya's children. The one wearing a red bow on the right is the elder sister Ubuyashiki Hinai, and the one wearing a yellow bow on the right is the younger sister Ubuyashiki Hikaru. In addition to these 2 sisters, Yoya has 3 other children, namely Ubuyashiki Hana, Ubuyashiki Kanata, and the eldest son Ubuyashiki Tariya. I don't know if it is the tradition of the Ubuyashiki family. Anyway, the 2 or 3-year-old children were pulled out by Yoya as a card. For this reason, Shinichi also jokingly told the Lord Yoya that he was exploiting child labor, but now it is the pillar meeting after all, and what we have to talk about is the serious matter about the future of the Demon Slayer Corps. Look, the Sound Pillar Yuzui Tengen is complaining about Shinichi. Shinichi, the final selection you hosted last time was really not glamorous. The awareness and ability of those swordsmen were too poor. Shinichi just shrugged his shoulders. He was also helpless. who knew there would be such an extraordinary boy like Santo. Namo Amitba, Tengen, it's not appropriate to say that, although those swordsmen lack ability, their courage and will are also worthy of recognition. Rock Pillar Beminji Gyumiai said with his hands clasped together. Flame Pillar Rengoku Makijuro did not comment on this, but mentioned another thing, my lord, the team of the pillars may be growing again. Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are evil spirits in the village of Kawakita Town, Nishikawa Prefecture. Please ask the pillar-level swordsman Moriki Shinichi to go and support. Ga. In the room, the originally closed eyes of different colors suddenly opened. On the carriage to Nishikawa Prefecture, Shinichi happily teased the chubby Madoka. Now he can no longer be called Little Madoka, because under the care of the members of the Umbu canteen, Madoka's body swelled like a balloon. Now he is no longer like a Shiba Inu, and has a tendency to evolve into another species, pig. Shinichi has also completely given up on asking Madoka to lose weight. It doesn't matter. Just be a little fatter, as long as Madoka is happy. Mori Shinichi, there is no explanation for this mission, and it seems that no powerful evil spirits have been encountered. Why do you need your support? Aren't the pillar-level swordsmen usually very busy? Besides Shinichi, Shinobu Kocho asked in confusion. During this period of time, Shinobu Kocho was completely bound to Shinichi. This has almost become a consensus in the Demon Slayer Corps. What do you want to find Mori Pillar-sama but can't find him? Go to the butterfly house and ask the butterfly ninja team. She must know where the Morihashira-sama is. Hearing Butterfly Ninja's question, Shinichi quickly caught up with Enji's tale, and then slowly explained, of course I don't have time at ordinary times, but there are always accidents. The situation in Kawakita Town is a bit special, and the information I got is more detailed than you. There are not only evil spirits there, but the most important thing is that the abducted humans are also special. According to the description of the survivors, the evil spirit seems to only abduct the elderly or those in poor health, and rarely attacks other humans. We all know that evil spirits who eat people generally tend to prefer women and children, and then young and middle-aged people, but an evil spirit that only eats the elderly is very strange. It is unlikely that ordinary evil spirits have this habit. I took the initiative to apply to come here to investigate. After listening to this, Butterfly Ninja understood, nodded, and continued to study the information in her hand. With the sunlight shining into the carriage, Shinichi rubbed Enji's head while looking at Kocho Shinobu. The serious expression of Shinobu in the sunlight is really cute. Shinichi stared at Kocho Shinobu's delicate face and thought involuntarily, but then he quickly reacted, shook his head, and muttered softly, no. Marimu Shinichi, what are you thinking about? Can you be serious? But Shinobu is really cute. Shinichi Mu, what are you mumbling about? Kocho Shinobu frowned his thin eyebrows and looked at Shinichi in confusion. Shinichi almost blurted out that you look cute, but in the end he held it back in time with his extreme reaction, which can be regarded as preserving the image of Mori Pillar. Nothing, I said that although Enji is getting fatter and fatter like a pig, he is still very cute. Enji. Innocently caught in the crossfire, is there still justice? Isn't this bullying an honest dog that can't speak? Who is the dog after all? Shinobu Kocho looked at the fat Enji lying in front of Shinichi, who suddenly looked aggrieved for some reason. Her nose twitched slightly, is that so? I think Shinichi, you should urge Enji to lose more weight. A normal Shiba Inu shouldn't be so fat. It's very unhealthy. Really? Then why did you feed your goldfish so fat? Like a meatball. That's different. Goldfish have to be chubby to look good. If you can't bear it, just give Enji to your sister. No, your sister will definitely be reluctant to let him go. You give Enji to me, and I will definitely make him lose weight. Shinobu Kocho said confidently with one hand on her waist and one hand pointing at Enji. The clever Enji widened his eyes and immediately looked at his master. As a result, Shinichi's eyes really flashed a little heartbeat. Enji, it's hot. Talking and laughing all the way, Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho soon arrived in Ishikawa Prefecture by carriage. After getting off the carriage, Shinichi's wide green haori slightly covered the two different lengths of the sun blades hanging around his waist. Shinobu Kocho also wore a short white haori, covering the Nichiren sword on her waist, which was lighter and thinner than that of the general team members. Under the haori, the two wore similar black Demon Slayer Corps uniforms. Such an outfit still attracted many curious eyes when they walked into Kawakita Town, Ishikawa Prefecture. After all, Kawakita Town is different from other open big cities. In this somewhat conservative place, it is rare to see the more avant-garde outfits of the Demon Slayer Corps. Soon, Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho came to the village where the intelligence said that there were evil spirits. In order to collect information about the evil spirits, Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho split into two groups, respectively, to inquire about the situation of the evil spirits and to inquire about the families whose elderly people were kidnapped. This village called Jipping Village is very closed and rarely interacts with the outside world. Basically, every household is a farmer, living life is also very simple, and the most advanced technology may be the electric lights that only a few families have. In a trance, it feels like walking into an ancient village 100 years ago. Originally, it was thought that collecting intelligence should not be difficult, but what surprised the two was that the local people, as well as the families whose elderly were kidnapped, did not seem to take this matter very seriously. There was even a family that rudely drove Shinichi out of the house when Shinichi came to ask about it, leaving a sentence, "Don't mind your own business. This is our own business. Outsiders, don't come to bother. Be careful that Prajna will find you who is in the way." After that, Shinichi was severely turned away. The inexplicable scene made Shinichi confused, but although Shinichi had no gains here, Kocho Shinobu on the other side gained a lot. In a family, a middle-aged man who had lost his father in his 70s told Kocho Shinobu a story in grief. It turned out that since hundreds of years ago, a legend had been circulating in their Jipping village, saying that as long as the elderly in the family were over 70 years old, they would become man-eating prajna, that is, evil ghosts, in order to prevent such things from happening. The village has had a tradition of driving the elderly who are about to turn 70 years old out of their homes or throwing them into the mountains to fend for themselves for hundreds of years. This is a shameful and ignorant custom. How can this be done? Kocho Shinobu was very angry, but the middle-aged man also smiled bitterly and said, "Who said it's not? But why do people do this? There is only one reason from ancient times to the present: poverty. There is not enough food to feed people, let alone the elderly who have no labor force." In fact, this was originally just a legend. In the past 100 years, with the improvement of productivity, there was enough food to eat, and with the government's control, this bad habit gradually disappeared. However, who would have thought that there would be a storm again in the recent period of time? Kocho Shinobu looked at the bitter-faced man and quickly asked, "What happened? Prajna really appeared?" Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. More than 10 years ago, there was a notorious gambler named Ohara Kasa in Jipping village. This bastard was addicted to gambling. He not only gambled away all his family property, but also gambled away all the money for the coffin prepared by his 70-year-old mother. His wife was also desperate for him and left him with her children. She had not heard from him for many years. His father was also angry to death more than 10 years ago. Later, this bastard became addicted to alcohol and drank all day long, but this was not the most annoying thing. His mother was over 70 years old and could only barely survive by weaving hemp ropes and digging wild vegetables every day. He never asked about his mother, and even often rudely robbed his mother of the little money she had saved from weaving hemp ropes, and went to drink after robbing the money. Even the villagers couldn't stand such bastard behavior. So one day a villager who went to the city went to the police station to report the matter, and the police at that time were also dispatched to arrest this unfilial bastard and put him in jail. But at this time, something shocking happened. The mother of the gambler, the old woman in her 70s, knelt down and begged the police not to arrest her son, saying that she was doing it voluntarily. There was no way, the police could only warn the gambler and leave, but the bastard did not appreciate his mother's kindness at all, but treated his mother even more harshly. Finally, one day, it was heard that a group of robbers ran into the mountain. They were robbers who escaped from the prison in the city and killed many people along the way. While the police were hunting them, they also issued a notice to let the villagers go out as little as possible. If any relatives were unfortunately killed by robbers, they could go to the police station to receive a pension. The gambler who heard the news immediately had bad thoughts. In short, his mother disappeared the next day, and he went to the city to get a large sum of money. The gambler with money became more unbridled. He drank and gambled every day. When someone asked his mother, he would shamelessly say that he practiced the tradition of 100 years ago, but everyone knew what he did. However, the gambler's life did not last long. He spent all the money in a few days, and he himself eventually drowned in the stream at the head of the village because of drunkenness, but since then, it seems that a Prajna, ghost, really appeared in Jipping village. Many people said that they had encountered it in the mountains, and since then, there would always be elderly people or seriously ill elderly people missing in the village. The villagers said that this was Prajna appearing in the world, but a few days after each elderly person disappeared, the elderly person's family would have a large amount of money for no reason. Under the temptation of money, some villagers were not afraid of the ghost and even began to be grateful to the ghost, because although they could have enough food in the current era, most families were still extremely poor. So, this is the story of Jipping village. Kocho-ren widened her eyes, covered her mouth with disbelief. She couldn't understand Xiao. It was just some money. How could it be more important than relatives? This is simply a sin. If Shinichi heard this story here, he would definitely find that the story of Jipping village was so similar to that of Terasai village he had visited. The darkness of human nature is sometimes far beyond people's imagination. Soon, the hurried Kocho Shinobu found Shinichi who had nothing to gain, and told him everything she had learned in detail. Shinichi was speechless for a long time after listening, and his face became a little gloomy. After a long time, he said with emotion, "Terasai village is not a special case, the human heart." Kocho Shinobu looked up at Shinichi and asked in confusion, "Terasai village? Muta Shinichi, what is that place?" "This village is called Jipping village." Shinichi shook his head. "That's another story. Xiao Shinobu wants to hear me tell you when I have time, but now, the mission is important. Let's meet this legendary Prajna." As he said, Shinichi reached out and touched Kocho Shinobu's hair. This action naturally caused great dissatisfaction to Xiao Shinobu, but over time, Xiao Shinobu got used to it. Although she would hum a few times in dissatisfaction, she was too lazy to resist and let Shinichi mess up her hair. Fortunately, her hair was not long and was easy to straighten. Now that we know what the evil ghost is like, we just need to wait and see. There are more than 10 families in Jipping village with elderly people who are almost 70 years old, and 2 of them have serious diseases and can only lie in bed. If the Prajna demon is going to attack, it will definitely attack the elderly in these 2 families first, so Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho agreed to keep an eye on one family each, and immediately let the crow contact if they find any situation. Shinobu's crow is called Yen, a crow that speaks nicely, at least much nicer than Aizo's voice. After Shinobu Kocho took the lead in heading towards a family, Shinichi was always a little worried. "Yuji, follow Shinobu Kocho. If anything happens, you must protect Xiaonin." Shinichi squatted down and patted Yuenji's butt. "Ah!" Yuenji cried out reluctantly, looking at the master with resentment. The bad master only cared about the little girl. It was obviously me who came first. Not only did he not care about me, but he also had the heart to let the little girl lose weight for him. It was really a high jump in the toilet passing shit, points. But even if he complained, Yuenji finally disappeared into the darkness with his chubby body. Shinichi was very confident in Yuenji's strength. In the battles over the years, it was not only himself who improved, but Yuenji was also growing. Compared with the evil ghost Karasuma at the beginning, Yuenji now has enough strength to crush 10 several Karasuma. With Enji watching behind Shinobu, Shinichi could rest assured, and then he rushed to the direction of another house. The night when the moon is covered by dark clouds is always particularly creepy. The thin moonlight shining through the dark clouds can't even see the road ahead. On a big tree, the petite Kocho Shinobu seemed to be resting on the branch like an elegant and nimble butterfly, and her big violet eyes carefully observed the house shrouded in darkness. Time soon came to midnight, and just when Kocho Shinobu thought that the Prajna demon would not appear, a pair of pale green eyes suddenly lit up on the roof of the dim house. "Is it coming?" When she saw the evil spirit, Shinobu Kocho's petite body tensed up instantly. At the same time, the crow Yen perched on her shoulder also flapped its wings and rushed towards the direction of Shinichi. The sound of the crow flapping its wings immediately attracted the attention of the pair of pale green eyes, and the fierce eyes immediately looked towards the big tree where Shinobu Kocho was living. With the thin moonlight, Shinobu Kocho also saw the face of this Prajna demon clearly, the pale and wrinkled skin, long fangs, pale green eyes, and ferocious and terrifying appearance really looked like the Prajna demon in the myth. Swish! Shinobu Kocho quickly pulled out a strangely shaped sunwool sword from her waist, and her big violet eyes were full of determination. I can do it. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A breeze blew by, and Shinichi, who had originally closed his eyes calmly, opened his eyes in an instant, and the green light in his left eye lit up. Not far away, Shinobu's was flying towards this side desperately. Needless to say, Shinobu must have encountered an evil spirit. Shinichi stood up in an instant, locked a direction and rushed over, but the next moment, a whistling sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded behind him. Shinichi's face changed slightly, his body flashed to the left in an instant, and a residual image brushed his feathers and screamed past. Boom! There was a loud bang, smoke and dust splashed everywhere, and Shinichi quickly turned around at this time, frowning, and when the smoke and dust dissipated, he also saw clearly what had just attacked him. I saw a large round pit on the ground, and in the pit, a scarlet long sword was deeply inserted into the ground, and under Shinichi's gaze, the red long sword suddenly seemed to melt, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a pool of blood and seeped into the ground. What the hell? Shinichi just complained, then suddenly looked in one direction. Sure enough, a figure gradually appeared in the darkness, black warrior jacket, golden eyes, cold face, short black hair, headband on the forehead, a big wu in the middle of the headband, sharp fangs, exposed lips, arms folded and hugged together, black claws flashing cold light. In the darkness, a strange ghost suddenly walked out. The moment he saw this ghost, Shinichi's heart alarm bells rang, and his intuition told him that the ghost in front of him was very strong. Very strong. Stronger than all the evil ghosts he had encountered so far. Such strength is stronger than 100, no. 200 Karasuma. Such momentum, upper string. Shinichi's hand has slowly touched the handle of the sunwool sword, but there is no word engraved in the other party's golden eyes. The strange Wugue didn't say anything. When it was more than 10 meters away from Shinichi, it stopped, moved its neck, made a series of crackling sounds, and then looked at Shinichi up and down with a scrutinizing eye. The aura is still too weak, but it has only been a few years, and it is not a waste of Shinichi's bloodline to be able to reach this level. Wugue seemed to be talking to himself. Shinichi didn't say anything, but held the sunwool sword tightly. Then, in a flash, the majestic vitality instantly filled his body. Concentrate. Kill everything. The turquoise light suddenly burst out, and the ground under the deerskin boots instantly cracked into countless cracks. The moment the two-color sunwool sword was unsheathed, the dazzling turquoise light illuminated everything in this dark night. Forest breathing 12 form forest sword / instant leaf. After Shinichi's improvement, the sword / speed has broken through a level, and the speed of the sword is no longer observable by the human eye. The green / really slashed straight at Wugue's neck like an instant falling leaf. However, facing this seemingly unavoidable sword, the Wugue opposite Shinichi was not nervous at all, and even showed a hint of excitement on his face, revealing his sharp fangs. This is like Shinichi. Good. Blood martial arts shield style Xuanwu. Wugue shouted excitedly, raised his arms, raised his right hand, and crossed his left hand to form an L shape. Bang. Clang. The swift slash collided with Wugue, and it actually made a buzzing sound of metal colliding. Shinichi's pupils shrank slightly, and under the huge reaction force, the whole person quickly retreated. When he stabilized his body, the hand holding the knife trembled slightly, and his eyes were instantly solemn, looking at Wugue. At this time, Wugue still maintained the posture just now, but scarlet light flowed around it, and it seemed like a giant shield with an exquisite and gorgeous painting of a ferocious black tortoise. Wugue dispersed the light shield around it, and looked at Shinichi with interest in his golden eyes, and praised, "Not bad, not bad, is this a move you invented yourself? Very good, much more offensive than Shinichi, I like it. I didn't want to waste time, but now I'm interested, come again. Let me see what else you have to surprise me." After speaking, Wugue suddenly stepped on the ground, squatted into a horse stance, crossed his hands, blood martial arts sword style soul sword. Squeak. Wugue's palms suddenly cracked, blood gushed out, and the scarlet blood condensed into two scarlet long swords in the blink of an eye. Shinichi also drew out the Sun-Will short sword from his waist, the long sword in his right hand and the short sword in his left hand, crossing the two swords. "Although I don't know where you are, this inexplicable evil ghost, but I have sensed your breath. The guy in Nara Prefecture is also you, right? See chapter 78, but it doesn't matter. When I kill you, I will know everything." Wugue raised his lips and said with a smile, "Good boy, your tone is so arrogant. Moriki Shinichi didn't dare to talk to me like this when he was still here. You'd better match your strength with your tone." Mori no breathing, 13-formed Nitanichiryu wolf soul. The turquoise roaring giant wolf rushed out, Wugue's golden eyes showed admiration, and his hands also danced with the scarlet long sword. Suddenly, countless blood-colored sword lights slashed out and collided fiercely with the turquoise giant wolf. Bang! Ping! Boom! Suddenly, a series of explosions and steel collisions sounded, and the huge movement almost woke up half of the villagers in Jipping village. When the confused villagers walked out of their homes, they could see the turquoise and scarlet lights bursting behind the village, and the big trees collapsed and were instantly shattered. Such a shocking scene immediately frightened these ignorant villagers. Some ignorant villagers even knelt on the ground and kowtowed continuously, thinking that the gods were angry. Let's not talk about the fierce battle between Shinichi and Wugue here. On the other side, Kocho Shinobu was also fighting hard. The Prajna ghost was extremely fast and could really hover in the sky like a mythical evil ghost. It could also constantly emit piercing screams to interfere with Kocho Shinobu's judgment. A trace of blood faintly seeped from the corner of Kocho Shinobu's mouth, but there was no sign of hesitation in her violet eyes. The Sun-Will sword in her hand had a peculiar shape, as slender as a needle, and only a small part of the top was sharpened. In fact, Kocho Shinobu's Sun-Will sword was made by the swordsmiths of the sword-forging village at the joint suggestion of herself and Shinichi. Of course, the masters of the sword-forging village were somewhat dissatisfied with the shape of this sword, but this Sun-Will sword is extremely suitable for Kocho Shinobu's fighting style, or in other words, it fits her unique breathing method. Although the speed of the Hanya demon is extremely fast, it is not impossible for Kocho Shinobu, who often trains with her sister and fights with Tian Tian and Shinichi, to catch up, finally, at a certain moment. Breath of Insects, Dance of Befangs, True Escape. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Breath of the Forest, one form iron birch slash. Shinichi held the Sun-Will sword horizontally with one hand and slashed at Wugue fiercely. At this time, one of Wugue's hands had disappeared, and the scarlet long sword held by the remaining hand was still blocked by Shinichi's short sword. The green slash was unstoppable and rushed straight to Wugue's neck, but even at this critical moment, Wugue was still very calm. Puff. I saw a brand new arm was repaired almost instantly, and such a recovery speed made Shinichi's pupils shrink directly. Blood martial arts sword style swallow strike. Wugue shouted fiercely, and a scarlet long sword appeared in his hand in an instant, stabbing straight out, facing Shinichi's iron birch slash head-on. The indestructible iron birch slash collided with the sharp and unparalleled swallow strike long sword, and the impact force that burst out instantly threw Shinichi away. The Sun-Will dagger spun and stabbed into the ground fiercely. Shinichi was forced to half-kneel on the ground to ease the surging internal organs in his chest. When the smoke and dust dissipated, the Wugue holding a sword and a knife seemed to be fine. He threw away the sword and the sword turned into blood when it fell to the ground. The Wugue walked towards Shinichi and talked casually. Very good, you can fight me with your current strength. Boy, you are really good. However, this duel is not a martial arts ethics on my part. After all, I am too familiar with Shinichi's forest breathing. I will give you another chance to see how strong you are after the demonization. Shinichi stood up indifferently and looked in the direction of Kocho Shinobu, as if seeing Shinichi's concern for Kocho Shinobu. Wugue made a look of sudden enlightenment. Oh. So you are worried about that little girl? It's okay. If that little girl can't even deal with an old ghost, then I advise you to mind your own business. It's just a burden to keep her around. Shut up. Shinichi couldn't bear it anymore and yelled angrily, then he stabbed the Nichiren sword in his hand into the ground fiercely, and took off the green Haori under Wugue's gaze. The Demon Slayer Corps uniform on his body was also full of gaps and scratches because of the battle with Wugue. I don't care who you are. Although you seem to know the ancestors of the Moriki family, I don't want to know why. I know that you, a chatterbox, are really annoying. Shinichi clenched his fists and said coldly, while the pink color of his right eye was instantly covered by a touch of scarlet, his pupils were erect, like a beast awakening. You want to see my power? Then I'll satisfy you. Blood Demon Art Blood Rage 3rd degree. Boom. The sudden burst of air from Shinichi's body seemed to ignite the air as well. In an instant, the uniform on the upper body exploded into pieces, revealing the red flesh, and orange-red lines were wrapped around Shinichi's muscles, sharp fangs broke through the lips, black claws shone coldly, and black hair danced wildly with the steaming air waves. It seemed that there was really a flame burning at the ends of the hair, and the whole person exuded an astonishing high temperature. In the throat, there was also a low roar like a beast, and the scarlet blood eyes stared at Wugue, and Wugue also instantly felt a feeling of being locked by a beast, but he was also an extremely fanatical fighter, and such a scene also aroused Wugue's excitement. Good. Great. Boy. You have some skills. I've been bored for hundreds of years. It's rare that someone can really make me feel a little excited. Come on. Go all out on me, ha 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 ha. Shinichi, who had activated the 3rd degree of blood burst, could no longer speak normally. In fact, this was also his first time trying the 3rd degree of blood burst. The terrifying and astonishing high temperature not only burned the enemy, but also burned his own body, causing his newly born flesh and blood to dry up and die in an instant. However, relying on the strong recovery ability of the evil ghost physique, his body has been repeating the process of necrosis and repair. Roar. The voice that came out of Shinichi's throat again was no longer a human voice, but a shocking roar. Bang. He suddenly stepped on the ground, and the hot red figure rushed towards the martial ghost like a cannonball. Whoosh. On the ground along the way, many dry fallen leaves and broken wood were ignited in the moment of the air wave. A little field mouse that had just crawled out of its nest was devoured by the flames before it could even react. In an instant, only a withered and intact skeleton was left. Where Shinichi passed was like a flame path, and even the ground was left with burnt marks. Facing the surging Shinichi, Wugue took a step back, not out of fear, but to accumulate strength. He stretched out his left leg, bent his right leg, clenched his fists, and stretched them across his chest, making a peculiar martial arts starting gesture. Swish. The golden eyes lit up instantly, and endless apes appeared. The red aura gushed out from the center of Wugue, and the terrifying aura was in the darkness, as if a real demon had descended to the world. Wugue bared his fangs, and his blood vessels burst. Blood martial arts armor style blood armor. Puff. Suddenly, the blood vessels on Wugue's body suddenly burst open, and the moment the scarlet blood gushed out, endless blood began to condense on Wugue's body. Soon, a blood-colored armor with gorgeous patterns and blood-red aura appeared on Wugue's body. Ha ha ha. Come on. Wugue laughed wildly, and faced Shinichi head-on with the blood-colored armor. Bang. Boom. A stronger sense of shock swept across the entire Jipping village, and the terrible roar frightened countless villagers. The fireballs and blood-colored lights that burst out behind the village almost lit up the entire night. God! Did we do something wrong? Why did you send down such a warning? An elderly man knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his face, and kept knelt down, and behind him, many villagers followed suit and knelt down. Is it Prajna? Did we anger the gods by ignoring the behavior of this evil ghost? Oh my God! I knew it. Money is not as important as family. God! I was wrong. I will treat my parents well in the future. Please don't be angry. A middle-aged man cried out in pain. The middle-aged man's words also shocked many villagers. Could it be because of this incident? At the same time, on a tall tree, a thin figure quietly watched the battle between Shinichi and Wugue. It was the ghost named Xiangjiu. He shook his head in a suit and said helplessly, I knew, Wu, that once you got the news about Shuni, you would definitely not be able to hold back. Hey, it seems that I have to do it myself. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiangjiu's body mysteriously dissipated, leaving only a faint blood mist. Everyone who has read this, please listen to what Muzi has to say. First of all, Muzi wants to beg for a wave of good reviews, because Senmuju's grades are really too bleak, so bleak that Muzi can't bear to look directly at them. I hope everyone can really support me and leave a good review. If possible, Muzi also hopes that everyone can go to Shuhuang to help Muzi promote this book. In reality, Muzi's studies are also very busy. Most of my free time every day is spent on writing, but the cruel grades make it really difficult for Muzi to persist. If it continues to be so bleak, Muzi may not be able to persist, and many foreshadowings can only be shelved. Muzi doesn't want to fall like this, so please help Muzi. T to the power of T. Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the forest, countless trees broke and shattered, burning dead branches and leaves crackled, and endless cracks and deep pits appeared on the ground. Obviously, there was a terrible battle here. In a huge deep pit, a naked figure half knelt in it, his body heaving slightly. Because he lowered his head, Shinichi's face could not be seen under the cover of black hair, and only low panting could be heard. Cracks that were still steaming all over Shinichi's upper body, and scarlet flesh could be seen through the cracks. Granulations were slowly wriggling to repair these cracks, but the speed was extremely slow. Outside the deep pit, Wugue, who was a little embarrassed, walked to the edge of the deep pit and looked at Shinichi with golden eyes. At this time, the blood-colored armor on Wugue's body was also covered with broken marks, and a large gap was smashed out on his chest. He clenched his fist and smashed it hard against his chest. The blood-colored armor on Wugue's body shattered and fell to the ground and turned into blood. With such strength, I recognize you, Moriki Shinichi. Keep working hard. Maybe you can achieve what Shinichi could not achieve before. Wugue looked at Shinichi, who had lost his fighting ability, and said slowly, then turned around, but before leaving, a small glass bottle was thrown to Shinichi. Wugue said without looking back, the things Shinichi asked me to keep before his death, now, it's time to give it to its real owner. After speaking, Wugue's body flashed and disappeared from the spot. Swish. On the treetops, Wugue opened his golden eyes, felt the faint breath in the air, frowned slightly. Shoku. In the deep pit, after Wugue left, a breeze blew. Shinichi's body shook slightly, and then he could no longer hold on, and fell down with a plop. The scarlet in Shinichi's eyes slowly faded, and his fangs and sharp teeth returned to their original state, but the scene in front of him was becoming increasingly blurred, and finally fell into complete darkness. At the same time, on the other side of Jipping village, the Prajna demon hovered in the low sky, and a piercing scream came out of his mouth. The elderly are a burden for the happiness of future generations. The elderly should take the initiative to end their lives. Why? Why stop me? I am obviously doing good things. But Kocho Shinobu was not moved by the twisted theory of the Prajna demon. She stared closely at the trajectory of the Prajna demon's movement, and the Sun sword was ready to attack again at any time. The previous attack that she tried her best was actually dodged by it. There is no such thing as a burden in this world. Family affection is always the most important. Any behavior that takes the lives of innocent relatives from others is shameful. Although Kocho Shinobu's tone is cute, it carries an unquestionable sense of seriousness. Ah! Shut up! The Prajna demon screamed again in anger, and the ghostly figure rushed towards Kocho Shinobu, with the long claws in his hands extremely scary. Facing the attack of the Prajna demon, Kocho Shinobu's eyes became solemn, and she bent down slightly, and began to accumulate power like a spring. Bang! At the moment when the Prajna demon rushed over, Kocho Shinobu's thin body bounced up directly, and the poisonous Nichiren sword pierced the demon's face like a flash of lightning, but the next second, Kocho Shinobu's heart trembled. It turned out that the hideous and ugly demon actually twisted his neck, avoided the stab in a deformed way, and passed by Kocho Shinobu. Damn! What a cunning demon! This time I lost another chance to attack. Shinobu thought regretfully, but suddenly. A sudden change occurred. Ah! A piercing wolf howl suddenly sounded, and the terrifying sound wave attack was more powerful than the scream of the Prajna demon ghost, and it directly shook the Prajna demon ghost who was about to escape into the air down from the sky. Good opportunity, that the violet eyes lit up, and Kocho Shinobu would naturally not let go of such a great opportunity. She saw her body still in the air rotated, and swooped down directly towards the Prajna demon ghost from a high position. Breath of insects, dance of butterflies, teasing. In a trance, it seemed that there was really a group of colorful and beautiful butterflies flying. Before the Prajna demon ghost could react, blood suddenly spurted all over his body, and his hideous face suddenly froze. Soon the purple wisteria flower poison quickly spread in the body of the Prajna demon ghost, and the demon ghost let out a painful wail, and his pale green eyes looked unwillingly at the night sky. The memories before her death came to her mind. Yes, the evil ghost Prajna was the mother of the gambler. It was her overindulgence that made her child slide into the abyss step by step. When her son became addicted to gambling, the first thing she thought of was not to stop him, but to take out all her savings for her son to squander. Later, she also voluntarily gave up her son to satisfy his greed. She traded her life for the pension, but in the end, when she was dying, she was turned into an evil ghost by an adult who passed by. After becoming the Prajna evil ghost, she still had those ignorant thoughts in her mind, thinking that the elderly were a burden to the family, so she arbitrarily hunted and killed those elderly people, and she also left the money she took from various chambers of commerce to those families with a twisted mind. Why? I obviously did the right thing. After struggling to say the last sentence, the Prajna evil ghost completely turned into ashes. Kocho Shinobu landed on the roof nimbly, watching the evil ghost turn into ashes in front of her, and she couldn't help closing her big eyes. At this time, under the influence of her sister, although she was still full of hatred for the evil ghost, she still had some kindness. If she knew the tragic life of the evil ghost, she would also close her eyes and hope that they would rest in peace, but none of them should go to hell. Ah! A sturdy black wolfhound rushed to Kocho Shinobu like lightning, and kept howling at her anxiously. Enji. Thanks to you just now. Shinobu Kocho couldn't help but pat the demonized Enji's head with her little hand. It should be said that although Shinobu Kocho didn't like the chubby Enji, she liked Enji in the demonized state. The mighty wolf body was full of power at a glance, but at this time, Enji had no intention of responding to Shinobu Kocho's praise. He just kept yelling at her anxiously, then bit Shinobu Kocho's white haori and pulled it in one direction. Soon, Shinobu Kocho also noticed the abnormality of Enji. Enji, what's wrong with you? That direction. Wait, that direction is Shinichi the wooden man. Shinobu Kocho widened her eyes and looked in the direction where Enji had been pulling her, and immediately realized that it was not good. Shinichi might be in trouble. Seeing that Kocho Shinobu finally reacted, Enji stopped pulling her and suddenly bit Kocho Shinobu's arm, then threw Kocho Shinobu onto his back. Of course, Enji was very measured and did not bite Shinobu's arm. At most his saliva wet her sleeve. Then, while Kocho Shinobu was still stunned, Enji ran towards Shinichi's direction at a speed as fast as a black lightning. Would Shinichi, please don't get hurt. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Enji brought Kocho Shinobu to the other side of Jipping village, Kocho Shinobu was deeply shocked by the tragic battlefield in front of her, and when she saw Shinichi unconscious in the deep pit, she was even more shocked and rushed into the deep pit. Wooden Shinichi. Wooden Shinichi. Shinichi. Are you okay? There was no response to the anxious call, until she put her ear on Shinichi's chest and heard the faint but real heartbeat. Kocho Shinobu was relieved, but the tragic scars on Shinichi's body still made her tremble with fear. What happened to Shinichi? What caused him, the pillar, to be so seriously injured? How could the thin Kocho Shinobu move the seriously injured Shinichi alone? Just when Kocho Shinobu was anxious, fortunately, there were several villagers from Jipping village. After hearing that the noise behind the village had disappeared, they came here to investigate the situation with courage. 2 days later, in the carriage, Shinichi, who was wrapped like a mummy, groaned twice. Shinobu, I think the bandages on my body can be removed. My injuries have almost recovered. With the breath of the forest, I will recover quickly. No. Your wound is so serious, it is best to treat it with medicine. It's only been 2 days. You have to be responsible for your body. Kocho Shinobu raised her eyebrows and said seriously. Shinichi sighed, but did not refute. In fact, the moment he saw Shinobu after he regained consciousness, he was most worried that his identity would be exposed, because after fighting with the martial ghost, he was not sure whether he was still in the demon state. However, judging from Shinobu's words, she did not seem to have discovered his identity. This made Shinichi relieved, otherwise he really didn't know how to face Shinobu and other members of the Demon Slayer Corps for a while. After all, the only one who knew his identity in the Demon Slayer Corps was the Lord. But who is that guy? Thinking of Wugue, Shinichi's face under the bandage instantly became solemn. That guy's strength was really too strong. Shinichi felt that the legendary upper-rank ghost might be just like that, but there were obviously no words in Wugue's eyes. In addition to what it said, it actually knew the ancestor of the Moriki family, Moriki Shinichi, and seemed to have a good relationship with Moriki Shinichi. The most important thing was that it did not kill him, although he was very embarrassed to say it. Shinichi had to admit that Wugue must have retained considerable strength when fighting him. Shinichi raised his head and looked at the top of the carriage. It seems that the story of the Moriki family is not that simple. There may be some hidden stories before and after the ancestor became a ghost. TSK, things are gradually becoming a little complicated. Kohiko Shinobu turned her head and looked at Shinichi, and asked in confusion, "What are you mumbling about?" Shinichi, Nothing, just talking to myself. Kohiko Shinobu, Shinichi's heterochromatic eyes exposed outside the bandage suddenly stared at Kohiko Shinobu's little face with interest, and asked in a strange way, "Speaking of Shinobu, why do I suddenly feel that your tone of voice has become much gentler? I'm not used to it. Is it because I'm injured that you are embarrassed to speak loudly?" Kohiko Shinobu. After calling Shinichi an idiot with some tsundere meaning, Shinobu turned his head directly, and Shinichi also happily did not ask any more questions. In fact, he just said it casually without any other meaning, but when Shinichi didn't notice the direction, Shinobu Kocho's face suddenly turned red at a certain moment. "Shinichi, you idiot. I really forgot it." Another half a day passed, and soon the carriage took Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho back to the Butterfly House, the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps. As soon as they returned to the Butterfly House, Shinichi and Shinobu Kocho learned a good news. A day ago, the Lord officially announced the promotion of 2 pillars. They are the Flower Pillar Kane Kocho and the Water Pillar Ju Tomioka. Sister became a pillar. That's great. Shinobu's big violet eyes even had stars. Soon, after learning that Shinichi was seriously injured, the pillars who were still in the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters came to visit. Namo Amitba, is the evil ghost that can seriously injure Moriki an upper-rank ghost? Said Gyumei with his hands clasped together, but Shinichi also answered sincerely that it was a completely unfamiliar ghost, and also described the ghost's ability in detail. Sound Pillar Yuzui Tengen was interested, and stroked his chin with one hand. "It does sound quite gorgeous, but forget about the evil spirits, their chapters are always unacceptably vulgar." Flame Pillar Rengoku Makijuro recently announced to the Lord that he was fake. The wife seemed to be seriously ill. Kane, who had just become a pillar, came to visit Shinichi as soon as possible. Seeing that Shinichi was in good condition, she was relieved. "Speaking of which, I have to thank Shinichi-kun. Thank you for taking care of Shinobu during this period. Shinobu must have caused Shinichi-kun a lot of trouble. Kane said to Shinichi on the bed while holding her sister Shinobu's hand. Sister. Shinobu's cheeks turned red, and she called her sister like a spoiled child, but in return, Kane smiled gently. However, Tomioka-ju, who became a water pillar at the same time as Kane, did not come to the butterfly house to visit Shinichi. Such indifferent behavior made Xiaonin a little indignant. She put her hands on her waist and said, "That cold-faced man is really too much. He always sparred with Muta Shinichi in the past. It would have been fine if he didn't say thank you after the sparring. Now he is a pillar after all, and he doesn't care about his teammates at all. Humph. It's too much." Well, Shinichi's former nickname was given to others, however, Kane explained for Tomioka-ju, Mr. Tomioka should also have something important. I heard that he left the headquarters just after he was promoted to a pillar. He seemed very anxious. Humph. The cold-faced man is just rude. At this moment, Tomioka-ju, who had just inherited the nickname of the cold-faced man, had already arrived at the foot of Sajiri Mountain. Looking up at Sajiri Mountain where he, Santo and Mikomo had lived for many years, Tomioka-ju felt like he couldn't move his feet for a moment. The wind blew his red haori and his hair. Under the boy's calm face, he was actually worried. He didn't know how to face Santo. After hesitating for a long time, Tomioka-ju finally walked into Sagarayama. In any case, it was his master's wish to inherit the title of Water Pillar. He had to tell his master the news of becoming Water Pillar in person. This was also the promise he made to Santo. When Ju came to the outside of the hut, there was already a figure waiting for him. It was not the master, but the familiar flesh-pink-haired boy. Tomioka-ju widened his eyes and looked at his best friend's clothes in disbelief. Santo. You. On the smiling flesh-pink-haired boy, the black uniform unique to the Demon Slayer Corps shone brightly. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A powerful evil ghost that is not one of the 12 demon moons. I have never heard of it before. Under the clean eaves, the Lord Ubuyashiki Yoya and Shinichi sat together. One by one, the illusory green branches merged into Yoya's body, and the majestic vitality was constantly infused into Yoya's increasingly weak body. Forest breathing, 9-type endless life. This is also Shinichi's insistence. Although the forest breathing cannot resist the erosion of the Lord's curse, it can finally relieve the Lord's physical pain and make the Lord relax for a few days. It was also at this time that Shinichi reported his encounter with the martial ghost to the Lord in detail, and also said that the ghost might know the ancestor of the Moriki family, Moriki Shinichi. Is that so? According to your description, Shinichi, this ghost who suddenly appeared doesn't seem to be the same evil ghost as Muzan's, the ancestor of the Moriki family. I will pay attention to the records of the Ubuyashiki family to find relevant information. In addition, Shinichi, you can also try to ask Mr. Moriki Mitsuyo, maybe you will get more. Lord Yaoya suggested. Shinichi also nodded in approval. He did plan to ask the old man. Speaking of which, Shinichi, what do you think of the two newly promoted pillars? I want to hear your opinion on Kane and Ju. The Lord suddenly asked. Shinichi was stunned for a moment, and after thinking for a moment, he answered affirmatively, it's very suitable. Both Kane and Tomioka-ju have the potential to become pillars. It's natural for them to become pillars. The Lord nodded, and then said with emotion, Kane is a very gentle swordsman, whether to other team members or those evil ghosts. I heard that Kane has always wanted to be friends with ghosts. However, I'm afraid Kane doesn't know that her wish has already been realized, right? That as he said, the Lord looked at Shinichi with a smile, and Shinichi also moved his eyes away unnaturally. After all, his identity is very sensitive. But even if Shinichi himself is a ghost, Shinichi does not agree with Kane's proposition. In Shinichi's view, he has never regarded ghosts as the same kind, and the best way to deal with ghosts is to send them to hell. Maybe, but Kane's flower breathing is indeed very good. Shinichi said casually. After talking about Kane, the Lord continued, and Ju, I heard that he had challenged you many times before he became a pillar. It can be said that you, Shinichi, have also watched Ju grow up, right? This time Shinichi nodded seriously. Indeed, Tomioka Ju has an extraordinary talent for water breathing, just as Mr. Urokodaki said, but before that, he seemed to be unaware that his brilliance was more like that of the boy named Santo. It is undeniable that Santo is also an excellent swordsman with superb talent, but if I really think, Tomioka Ju is more talented. I believe that in the near future, he will definitely be able to breathe water at a higher level than the current level. Achieve higher achievements. Lord Yaoya looked at Shinichi with some surprise. He didn't expect Shinichi to give such a high evaluation of Ju. Is that so? However, Ju seems to have always misunderstood you. Don't you plan to explain to him? Shinichi smiled indifferently, and then said, there is nothing to explain. Everything is what I should do. Two equally outstanding geniuses should not bury each other. One needs to show his edge, and the other needs to be clean. Blind protection and blind heroism are not desirable. From the conversation between the Lord and Shinichi, everyone should be able to guess that Shinichi deceived Ju, or Shinichi deceived all the swordsmen in the final selection. Satsuma was not eliminated. Not long after Satsuma left Fujikiyama, Shinichi urgently wrote a letter to the headquarters and the former water pillar Mr. Urokodaki Sakanji where Sagarayama was located, detailing his arrangements. In fact, Shinichi admires the brave and responsible Santo, but he does not approve of Santo's blind heroism, even though Santo's original intention is good. But letting those swordsmen who are not qualified to pass the final selection join the Demon Slayer Corps is not only irresponsible to the Demon Slayer Corps, but also irresponsible to the lives of those swordsmen, so Shinichi pointed this out very bluntly. However, this is not a big shortcoming, and Santo's brilliance will not be overshadowed by these shortcomings. On the surface, Shinichi eliminated Santo, but this is just to make those who passed the test because of Santo feel more sense of crisis in their hearts, and to prevent them from getting used to relying on the blessing of the strong in the future, but to work hard to improve their own strength. As for Santo, Shinichi secretly invited him to join the Demon Slayer Corps in person, but he needed to hide his identity and wait for the right opportunity to show up again. Therefore, while Tomioka Ju regretted that his friend Sato was not selected, Sato had actually put on the uniform of the Demon Slayer Corps, and also took over the Nichiren sword, and killed demons in the dark. However, Sato, who always wore a mask and hid her face under the hood, was not recognized by anyone. The powerful Sato was just a taciturn and mysterious Class A swordsman in the legend of the Demon Slayer Corps. In fact, Sato had met Tomioka Ju many times in the Demon Slayer Corps, but Sato, who always remembered Shinichi's words, did not choose to recognize Ju, but watched Ju grow up quietly in secret. In the Demon Slayer Corps, the first person to figure out Sato's identity might be the cute girl Makomo. Almost the moment she saw Sato, the cute Makomo widened her eyes, but before Makomo called out Sato's name, Sato quickly stopped Makomo. From then on, there was another member in the Demon Slayer Corps who hid a secret from Ju. However, Shinichi probably didn't expect that the Lord had actually issued an order quietly. At this time, Santo should have recognized Ju as the Lord. Yoya was very reluctant to see misunderstandings between the swordsmen, especially the excellent pillar-level swordsmen, so after Tomioka Ju became the water pillar, Yoya immediately notified Santo, hoping that after Ju returned, the gap between the water pillar and the forest pillar would disappear. Wow! The breeze blew, and the green illusory branches gradually dissipated. The Lord Yoya also felt a long-lost sense of relaxation in his body. I couldn't help but stretch my waist. Thank you very much, Shinichi. The Lord said sincerely. It was at this time that the Lord's wife, Amain, brought two cute little girls, Ubuyashiki Hinai and Ubuyashiki Hikaru. After seeing Shinichi, Tianin bowed earnestly and thanked him. Thank you, Mori Hashira-sama, for everything you have done for the Lord. Shinichi also quickly returned the greeting and said, this is what I should do. Tianin-sama is too polite. He greeted the two cute little girls again, took out a handful of candy from his pocket, and stuffed it into the hands of Hinai and Hikaru, whose eyes were full of sparkles. It was at this time that Tianin-sama said to the Lord Yoya with a sad face, the wife of the flame Hashira-sama, Mrs. Ruka, has passed away. What? Shinichi and the Lord were both stunned. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What? Madame Rohu? Shinichi murmured in disbelief. He had visited the Rengoku family and was deeply impressed by Madame Rohu, who was both gentle and upright. The warm atmosphere of the Rengoku family also made Shinichi feel very comfortable, but Shinichi never thought that Madame Rohu, who was in good health a year ago, would, without any hesitation. Lord Yaya stood up and went to the Rengoku family house with the support of Tianin. However, Tianin persuaded the Lord and explained softly that this was also the request of the Flame Pillar. He did not want to affect the Demon Slayer Corps because of family affairs, and promised to return to the team soon. He hoped that the Lord would not mind. It seemed a very upright decision, but Shinichi felt that Rengoku Makijuro's heart would never be as calm as Tianin said. Makijuro's love for his wife was incomparably deep. After bidding farewell to the Lord and leaving the Lord's mansion, Shinichi looked up at the somewhat foggy sky, sighed with regret, and then walked forward with the Sun-Will sword at his waist tightly grasped. I hope that the death of Mrs. Ruka will not change the warm Rengoku family. Shinichi said softly, thinking of the optimistic Rengoku Kaijuro and the somewhat shy Rengoku Chijuro who often huddled behind Kaijuro. In the following time, although the Flame Pillar Rengoku Makijuro expressed that he did not want to delay the Demon Slayer Corps because of family affairs, several pillars and the Lord visited and condoled in their personal names. Shinichi could clearly feel that the tall and optimistic Rengoku Makijuro seemed to have changed. The optimistic and upright expression on his face that once gave people a sense of trust was gone, replaced by a touch of indelible sorrow and vague decadence between his eyebrows. But it was unrealistic for Shinichi to say anything to comfort people. He didn't have the eloquence of the Lord. He could only hope that Mr. Rengoku could be strong. Shinichi also took the time to talk to Kaijuro. However, compared with his father Makijuro, although Kaijuro was also sad, he always remembered his mother's teachings before his death, so he was still very positive that he would not fall because of this. When saying goodbye to the Rengoku family, Shinichi looked back. The Rengoku family can almost be said to be a long-standing demon-slaying family like the Lord's Ubuyashiki family. The inheritance of the Flame Pillar has never been cut off for thousands of years. I hope the inheritance of the Flame Pillar will never die. This is also Shinichi's best wish for the Rengoku family. After a while, in the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, the Water Pillar has not returned to the team yet. Although the Flame Pillar has returned to the team, Makijuro's condition makes everyone very worried. Although he said that he was fine, his red eyes and the smell of alcohol all over his body did not look like he was fine. The Rock Pillar and the Sound Pillar also went to the area to perform the mission, so only the Mori Pillar Shinichi and the Flower Pillar Kane of the Butterfly House were left in the headquarters. A child disappeared in Kamioka County, Tokyo. There was no news from the several teams of demon slayers sent to investigate. Although one team came back, they found nothing in the temple where the child disappeared. Sanemi, this is the mission we are going to cooperate on this time. A sunny-looking demon slayer said with some surprise, with two small scars on the corners of his mouth. It was the Class A swordsman, Makino. The team members following Makino were more eye-catching. They had a strong and powerful body at first glance. The white coat on the Demon Slayer uniform was different from that of ordinary people. There was a big kill word printed on the back. Under the messy white short hair, there was a pair of wide eyes. The white part of the eyes was covered with bloodshot, and the pupils were smaller than those of ordinary people. What was even more terrifying was that there were crisscrossing scars on the team members' faces, foreheads, exposed chests, and arms. At first glance, it can bring a great sense of oppression. This member who looks scarier than the devil is the junior brother Fushigawa Shima, who Kwang Jin always talks about. He is also a Class A swordsman. In the Demon Slayer Corps, basically everyone knows that the Class A swordsman Shima hates the devil. After all, this ruthless man was able to kill several devils with pure melee and his own blood before joining the Demon Slayer Corps. The scars on his body are also wounds he took the initiative to cut in order to hunt devils. Shima's blood is extremely rare, and even among the rare blood, it is a rare top grade. Ordinary devils will be drunk even if they just smell it. Shinichi has some knowledge of Shima's rare blood, but due to the majesty of Mori Pillar, he is embarrassed to ask Shima openly. However, due to Shima's desperate battle with the devil, the butterfly house has become Shima's second home. Basically, as long as he returns to the headquarters, Shima spends half of his time in the butterfly house to recover from his injuries. Therefore, it can be said that Hanabe Kane often meets Shimizu. After so many times, even the gentle Kane will smile, slightly angrily. He told Shimi to take good care of himself and not to fight so frantically. Of course, Shimi never took it to heart. Sometimes when he got anxious, he would say to Kane, "You are such a nagging woman. Just bandage me up." Kane was not angry yet, but the little ninja on the side was furious. If it weren't for Shinichi stopping her, the fierce little ninja would have immediately drawn out the knife and made a few more holes in Shimi. Before this time, Kwang Jin would always appear at the right time and apologize for Shimi. Rather than saying that Kwang Jin and Shimi are like brothers, it is better to say that they are really like brothers, but Kwang Jin is always the one who wipes the ass. On the way, Shimi crossed his arms, glanced at Kwang Jin with bloodshot eyes, and said with some disdain, "They can't investigate because they are too weak. I am enough for this kind of mission." Kwang Jin patted Shimi's shoulder. "You can't say that. Everyone who joined the Demon Slayer Corps worked very hard. In addition, we 2 A-class swordsmen were dispatched for this mission. I am afraid the mission will not be easy. If we fail, the next one may be a pillar-level swordsman." Pillar? Shimi was stunned. When he mentioned the pillar, the image of Kocho Kane appeared in his mind subconsciously. He quickly shook his head to get rid of the random thoughts. Kwang Jin on the other side smiled and said, "However, after completing this mission, we may be one step closer to the position of the pillar. Shimi, don't forget our agreement. Whoever becomes the pillar first will treat us to a meal. Well, let's eat beef rice. Fresh and smooth eggs with fragrant beef." Slurp. Shimi's forehead was bulging with 2 blue veins. Hey! Hey! Who promised you this boring agreement? You greedy ghost, just go and eat if you want. Kwang Jin hugged Shimi's shoulders and said with a smile, "That's different. Becoming the wind pillar is also the master's wish. This kind of beef rice is more memorable, right? Shimi, you win." Just as the two were talking and laughing, a voice full of interest suddenly sounded behind them. "Are you going to Tokyo too?" The two turned around immediately after hearing this, and Kwang Jin shouted in surprise, "Mori Pillar-sama." "Buzugawa," Shimi said with his eyes wide open, "It's you?"